If you would, Nidra, go ahead and advance the slide accordingly. Awesome. Thank you, Nidra. So today's session is titled the Expert Webinar, Vantagepoint Billing Terms and Automation, presented by Aktion Associates. Our presenters today, we're actually going to have two. So the first one's going to be Nidra. She is a principal consultant from the AES division with 25 plus years of financial management and consulting experience with 350 client migrations, trainings, and ongoing support, and is a Deltek Master Certifications in Vantagepoint and Vision. Our second presenter today is going to be Derek. He's a senior consultant through the AES division. He has been a Vision admin for 13 plus years, has a technical background in SQL, previously was at a 800 plus person firm, has SMS, excuse me, I'm gonna just read the letters on that one, I'm not sure. So then SSRS and SSIS users as well. As far as the agenda is concerned for today, though, we are going to go over an overview of billing automation, followed by setting up the project and contract. Then we're going to go into selecting billing terms and types, talk about reviewing some billing terms. We're going to do a demo, which is going to take up the majority of our time today. Then we're going to go over and pass it to our other presenter, Derek, and he's going to go over a discussion of the process and go into a little bit more technicalities there. And then we're going to end with that Q&A session that I mentioned earlier. But at this point in time, though, I would like to go ahead and pass things over to Nidra. So Nidra, whenever you're ready, please feel free.
Thank you, Jared. The customization to automate billing term setup is based off of the project field values that you select when the project is awarded. This customization benefits those that are responsible for entering information on the Contract Management tab in the Project Hub. It will also reduce errors and lessen the workload as a second user doesn't need to complete the billing terms in order for proper invoicing to occur. Definitely a time saver. Workflows are used to associate the details entered in contract management with a billing type and even a rate table. User-defined fields are created for the billing type and rate tables. For billing type, you can select from a variety of options, several of which we're going to look at today. For rate tables, you can create a list from your company's rate tables. You are not limited to the rate table designated in settings and default billing terms. In addition to populating your billing terms, using a billing type user-defined field allows you to run project reports by this field, and it also can associate workflows to assign the appropriate revenue method for your project. Billing type options include hourly, hourly not to exceed with an aggregate limit, hourly not to exceed with individual limits, lump sum by project, and lump sum by phase. The beauty of customization is that we can copy the standard billing term function, which is rates for reporting, not for invoicing, when a fee or lump sum method is selected, or set the multipliers for expenses or consultants based on another user-defined field in the project setup. Another option to consider is to include receipts with invoice. Again, this would be based on a user-defined field. We can work with you to set up these detailed workflows to support your specific billing procedures. Now I want to go into Vantagepoint and take a look at some of this automation. So I've created a new project in the Project Hub going under Projects. I've set the project up, and in addition to that, I have added project structure. So I have 4 phases as my WBS2 level. Once the project is set up, then we're going to go into Contract Management. Click on the second tab for Contract. And the top portion, and you always have to be at the top level of your structure, so this very top project level, to enter the top grid. So you click on Add Contract, you put in your information. Part of it is user-defined. Your contract description could be a PO number, or it could be a sequential number. Your type of contract, the status of your contract, and then this is a key piece of information for contract management because this pushes it out to the rest of Vantagepoint, whether it's plans or in this case, the billing automation and project review, several different places that can have the information as it's written in your contract. On the far right of the top grid, I have the breakdown of the contract into different components. So I have my direct labor and direct expenses, which merge together to form the compensation amount. The direct consultant is a standalone field, and then reimbursable expenses and consultants added together to create our reimbursable allowance. And all of this together, the compensation, the direct consultant, and the allowance make up our total contract. In the bottom grid, we can see the breakdown between each of our different phases. And if we had a third level, a task level, or a subtask level, then we could even have it broken down to that level if we need to. You really base this decision on how your contract is written. So I've got all of the breakdown for each of my 4 phases, and you can see that it does total the bottom grid with my top grid of my 250,000. So everything is in sync with both grids on my contract management. So now I'm going to close this structure icon there and go back to projects. And at this time, I want to start showing you some of the automation that Derek has provided for us, and it's on the accounting tab. So we have the billing type field and we have a rate table field. This one is selected by labor category, but you can choose different, if it's an individual rate table or a labor code table, you can choose what you typically would use for yours. We just have a couple of, or 3 different samples here, but these could be specific to how you invoice your clients. The one that we're going to look at the automation for today is billing type, and I want to start with hourly. So from here, I'll just go to billing terms. And you'll notice as I open up billing terms, when you have a brand new project and you set up billing terms, you're ready to set up billing terms, you get a screen that says billing terms do not exist, and you create add new billing terms. But with this automation, it skips that and goes right in and populates many of the fields. So I selected hourly for this one. I have my method is by category and my rate table. This box here that we talked about on one of our slides that's for reporting and not invoicing is not checked because it is going to be a time and materials job, and we are going to invoice the labor. If I click on the fees tab, it shows no fee billing. And if I click on more calculations, you'll see I don't have any not to exceed amounts with it just hourly. Now let's go back and look at another one of our billing term options. So again, back to my accounting tab. And this time I'm going to select hourly not to exceed with individual limits. So I changed that, and I had already saved the first one that was just hourly, but now I have to save this, and this save option is what triggers the workflow. So I click save and then go to billing terms. Again, on my rates tab, I'm going to see my method is by category. It has my rate table that I had selected. And again, this box is not checked. No fee billing. But when I click on more calculations and I go into the billing limits, you'll see that I do now have a limit defined, which is individual limits. I have a labor limit. I have the reimbursable consultant limit, and I also have the expense limit. This is only going to be the reimbursable and direct because these are the only components that will show up on the client's invoice. We had two other parts of our contract, direct expense and direct consultant, but those will not ever show up on the invoice, so they're never included in the billing limits. Okay, now let's go back and look at a third option. And this time we're going to select lump sum by phase. Again, I'll click Save to trigger our workflow and then go into billing terms. Now you'll notice a change on the Rates tab. So I still have my labor category method is by category. And this box is now checked because it is not a time and materials job. It's going to be billed as a fee, but we do want these rates to show up for reporting. So we can select whatever category table we want to for our report, or we can have this defined in our workflow. You can have whichever way you prefer. Now if we go to the fee tab, we're going to see that all of this has populated, and this comes directly from contract management and the way I broke the contract down. And you'll notice here that I did it very evenly. Everything's 25%, so it shows up very easily on that. But if you have different percents that you enter of the contract, it will calculate the percent of the total for you. So we've got the method up here as complete by phase, and it's as a percent of the fee, and the basis is lump sum. In the center grid, my fee came in from contract management, the total contract amount. Now that does include my amounts for the direct expense and direct consultant, because we might, we are going to invoice that, even though we're not going to invoice it like we did on the hourly invoices, so that it does show up here, but it doesn't show up on time and materials jobs in the limits. So at the bottom, I've got my conceptual design, schematic. As I scroll down, I've got design development and construction documents, and each of them are 25% of the total fee. As we're going through to invoice, we can either update our percent complete on the fee tab in billing terms, or we can do it in interactive billing. If I click on more calculations, there is nothing limited here in billing limits. If we wanted to put in a fee limit, the option is here, but most of the time the limits are used primarily for time and materials jobs. Okay, I am going to now turn it over to my co-presenter, Derek Boren, and he is going to give you some additional information.
Well, thanks, Nidra. I appreciate that. So what Nidra kind of showed you through is the basis of the billing terms automation as it goes through. What I kind of want to discuss with you all today is just some additional options that come inside of there. Billing terms is a wonderful, powerful tool for us to use, and really it kind of lays back in everyone else's hands in what kind of customizations or additional offerings we can bring out there. So Nidra showed us the one with selecting a rate table outside on the project setup itself. And that's one of the many options we've done for different clients as it comes across. It really levels it out there to what you want to see inside of billing terms. Just like the limits that that Nidra was showing us just a minute ago, we could also set up some external limits if you want to limit it on something else. There's the rate tables we can control that comes in, whether that be from labor categories or you want to use labor codes or any of those different processes we know we can use inside of billing. It really, the options are a little bit endless as it comes down that way. It's really what you want to see. And then what is a repeatable process? So as we go into billing terms, what we want to try to help with at Aktion here is to say, when you're doing the same process over and over and over and over again, let's set that up so we can do it automatically for you. If you're building the same billing terms, with slight tweaks here or there, but I'm basically setting up the same ones over and over and over again, let us help you in automating some of that. If it works straight up the way they're kind of built right now, that's awesome. If we need to make adjustments, or we have some sort of special case, or you need to use add-ons, or you need some other piece that always falls inside of there, any sort of those fields in there we can control as they go through. The workflows generally are the same as they go through. We're going to run everything else kind of in the back end and the SQL side of it to set those tables up. The basis for the billing terms kind of comes up out of our default terms, and then we can go from there. So depending on your different types, we can adjust those out a lot of different ways. It really is kind of in your hands as far as what kind of ideas or what kind of limits you want to put on that. So there's a lot of power inside of it. And again, it's one of those things, think, if I'm doing the same process over and over again, we can probably automate that. If every single billing term you set up is totally different, it makes it a little tougher to use some of the automation that's in there. But when we know that we're doing a lot of them the same way, or at least in our different groups, we're doing them the same, we can automate those and set those up, take those steps out of there, save, a dozen clicks, 2 dozen clicks to set those pieces up. So we can help out in a lot of ways that, as far as that goes.
Thank you,
Nidra, is there
Derek.
anything else you want me to discuss, or?
I think maybe if you, one of the things I mentioned on the slide was if you go in and add the portion that would, I'm finding my note here, to include receipts with your invoices. That's an option in billing terms that they can turn on or off, but that, and then also the multipliers can be set for different billing types for the expenses and consultants.
Yep, absolutely. And those can be driven off of a number of different things, right? So if we want to use that off of, if we want to drive that off of a static field that you're going to set inside the project, if we have to drive that off of a combination inside of there, again, we can look at it from a lot of different ways. The data all sits inside of the system. So if there's a piece that we have to check or run it in Flux, it runs through that when it creates those terms. So we can pull it off of something, whoever the project manager is. We could pull it off of whatever org or profit center you set up on your particular project, or even that phase of the project as it goes through, if we need to have some sort of adjustment for it. So again, a lot of power inside of there. If there's a reason why we do something, that's kind of all we need in the SQL side of it, to look at it and say, because of this, I want this answer over in my billing terms. So we can use stuff that's right on the basis of the project itself to then turn around and set those billing terms up, because that's the way that you want to see them. And again, if it works for the way that you're running through billing terms, we can capture that in there. The big thing I look at is usually just the repeatability as it goes through something. If it's a total one-off and this is only one time we're going to use it, it makes it hard to capture it inside of there. Not to say that it's not worth it, but it makes it more difficult to do it. This really like Nidra said early on, saves you time when it's that same process over and over and over again because of this. And even if it adjusts a little bit, again, like I said, because of profit center or a project manager or whatever that is, we can adjust rate tables that way. We can adjust multipliers that way. We can apply those as it goes across, as long as we've got a field to pull it off of to set those up.
And I guess the same thing would work by client.
Correct. Yes. Yes. If there's you need a specific table by client or group of clients, that kind of thing, like we can totally capture that as well when it goes through and creates those and sets the billing terms up.
What about unit tables? Is there any way to automate that in the billing terms?
Yeah, we can. Again, as long as we've got some sort of capture to pull it off of, so we know where to look, and it's got a bit of consistency inside of that. So again, if you always use this with this particular client, or you always use this table because of, it's a certain setup inside your project, we can capture that and pull that down into the billing terms as well. It really is up to your imagination a little bit to say, hey, I need this to set up this way in the billing terms because my project is set up this way. We can kind of capture that. As long as we have some place to capture that data so we know what you're thinking, we can capture that and pull it into the billing terms and use it to our advantage and save a couple clicks in there.
And some days those couple of clicks add up. So
They do, right? And we all know for those of us that set up projects, especially on in the busy season, and that's all you got to do is set up projects and then turn around and set up billing terms over and over and over again. And you're like, I've seen this screen so many times today. We can really help save in some of that when it's that same process over and over again. And maybe you got to look at one or two of them, but at least you're not having to look at all 40 of them you're setting up, or all 10 of them you're setting up, or whatever that number is for you.
okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Jared now and see if we have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Nidra, and thank you, Derek, both. So I am checking out the Q&A right now. I don't see any questions in the Q&A at this time. If anybody does have any questions, though, please feel free to ask them at this time. We do have plenty of time left in the session itself here. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for those questions to come in, Nidra, would you do me the honor of advancing the slide forward so we can have some contact information up there for both you and Derek?
Yes.
Thank you. So it does look like I just had a question come in here. So Sabrina asked, are you able to define the workflow for an hourly project setup, look at the office location to pull in the proper rate table? In parentheses, she then put in, we have different rates by location. So that sounds like something probably a Derek question then.
Yep, and you're absolutely right. If we have the, everybody defines office location a little bit differently. That could be inside your inside your profit center there. It could be another field that's on there. But yeah, if we have that to use and we know it's gonna match back to something, we can totally use that to pull in the rate tables so they apply appropriately by location.
Awesome. Thank you for your questions, Sabrina. If you have any others, feel free to ask them at this time as well. Let's see if we have any other questions come in here. We'll stay on here for another minute if we have another question come in. Okay, looks like Don Brown just asked a question. Don asked, how does it handle sub-level terms?
You want to take that, Nidra, or you want me to?
I think probably that'd be good for you to take. I know obviously it's turning on sub-level terms, but you might speak to how it knows to do that.
So usually then you set your sub-level terms at the top level of your project so that it's looking at your individual lower levels of it. And then you can set it specifically on your different phases or tasks, depending on where you're at, and you can kind of set it up that same way. So you could have a mix and match inside there. So if certain phases need to be time and materials, and then there's other ones that are a lump sum, or you want them to be at the phase level there, you can kind of use both inside of there. So again, it's a really powerful tool to set those up kind of across the board if you want to have different variations of billing terms inside of your project. So it's you kind of set it up at the top level, and then you go down into your lower levels and set what you're looking for inside of there. And there's a few little nuances inside of it as it goes through, and we can work through those independently with someone over working through them. But you set them kind of, you tell it you're going to use sub-level terms at your top level, and then use your terms you're looking for at the lower levels.
Awesome. We did have another question come in here for you guys. So the next one here is asking, what's the best way on lump sum projects to know when contract management gets edited and therefore fees and billing terms need to be updated as well? Derek, is that another question for you then?
Oh, it may be.
It is.
What's the best? Thanks, Nidra. What's the best way on lump sum projects to know when the contract management gets edited? So we're kind of working through that in a couple different places. Nidra and I were playing with it a little bit, even with an amendment or an adjustment to the contract that goes inside of there, and kind of pushes that over. And we're playing with an idea to actually use it like through a trigger, basically. So when your contract management gets adjusted in there, it's going to push that value all the way across, all the way down to the billing terms. Some of it right now, you have to hit a save on it again, basically, so it fires and it pulls those values back over there. So we're kind of toying with the idea to actually create a trigger that's going to run after it's been created to push that value all the way over. Knowing that that does happen, and we want to make sure we capture all those values all the way down to the billing terms so it gets applied to the next bill that comes out. So we're working on a trigger actually to pick some of that pieces up, especially now that we're over inside of Vantagepoint. In Vision, it was a little more straightforward coming out of it, or we used to create a custom grid to kind of hold those values in there. And with contract management being such a big part of Vantagepoint, where it kind of flows and controls those over there, we're actually looking at adding another piece inside of there. So it's pulling it up from as soon as you hit save on the contract management side, it finds its way down to where it should be.
Perfect. Thank you, Derek. It doesn't look like there's any other questions in the queue at this time. So at this point in time, I'd like to ask both Nidra and Derek, do you have any final remarks for us?
Well, thank everyone for joining us. We appreciate your spending part of your time with us today and hope that we can help you automate your billing terms and any other processes. We've got lots of great technical people at Aktion that can automate almost anything. I'll keep you busy, Derek.
I know you will, Nidra. No doubts in my mind. And Nidra's right. If you can kind of think it up, there's chances are we can probably do it. So any questions or you got some specific you want to talk about, feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we'll help you get questions answered and see what we can do to help your automation process.
Perfect. So thank you, Nidra. Thank you, Derek, both. And thank you, everybody, for attending today's session. We really hope that you found value in today's session. If you do want to copy that recording, please go ahead and send me that email. My email is in the chat. I'm going to announce it now as well. It is jgater, spelled JGATER, at Aktion with a K, spelled AKTION.com. Send me that email and make sure you get a copy of that recording as well. So again, thank you, everybody, for joining today's session. Hope you found value and have a great rest of your days. Take care.